What's up, everyone? I'm here today with Joey Gilkey of Sales Driven Agency. He is probably one of the best salespeople when it comes to agency sales in the space. I want to have him on, pick his brain about anything and everything agency sales. Joey, how you doing, man? Why don't you give a quick little intro about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, man. Ryan, thanks for having me on. Joe Gilkey, CEO over at Sales Driven Agency. My thing is really to help you fire yourself from sales. So that is the boiled down version of what we do. But how that happens is building out your what we call our core four. Right, you got to build out the sales processes. We build out sales technology. We help hire, train, and manage salespeople. The hardest of all those three. And then the fourth one is helping equip them with sales assets. And so for us, we're all about agencies. That's our thing. And helping them, just see a burden in the industry. One, not knowing how to sell. Two, not knowing how to get them, the owner, the founder out of sales. Because at the end of the day, 92% fail rate, I believe, is the agency fail rate last I checked after 5 years. So we're trying to change that in the industry a little bit.
We talked a little before we came on about everyone watching this should check out your website too, Sales Driven Agency. To me, it's a tremendous example of how you can do a lot more with less. You told me before too, if you're
Yes.
comfortable talking about your revenue, doing quite a bit of revenue off of basically a single page website and just really a teach tape for what a VSL or kind of like a homepage video should look like, in my opinion. But what I do kind of want to dive into first is, like I said, a lot of our agencies are a little bit on the smaller side, right? Between 25 and 100K in revenue. And something that I noticed through coaching and work with them is they usually don't have a salesperson. And I think a lot of what they struggle with just listening to them is they don't know who to hire, when to hire, how much to pay them, comp structures. Is this the right time? I'm afraid to lose sales if I step out. When do you think, in your experience, is the best time for an agency to hire a salesperson?
Yesterday, no,
Uh-huh.
I say that somewhat jokingly, somewhat true. I think it totally depends, right? So again, revenue does play into that. Um, the second thing is there is a level of importance to having a system or a foundation for that salesperson to come in and be successful, right? And a lot of agencies kind of fall into this trap of one, they're never, no one's ever going to sell as good as me. Maybe, that might be true. You might have a 60% close rate and a salesperson's going to maybe have 20 or 30%, but you're only able to give 10 hours a week. What's someone who can commit 40 hours a week? And then if you go to the gym and you shoot free throws for 4 hours a day versus me shooting 1 hour a day, you're probably going to get, drastically better than I can, and eventually surpass me in your ability. And so what I learned from a mentor a long time ago, whether it's sales or it's any other role, is two things. One, you can't have someone sit in a seat that you're currently occupying. So one, you've got to take that leap, that risk, and get out of the seat and let them come into their own. Two, you've got to be okay with someone being 70% as good as you. That's how you scale, is you have that ability to say, you know what, 70% is good enough. Done is better than perfect. Let's ship it and let's rock and roll. And so that is the higher level answer. Now we can get into profit margins and revenue numbers and all those types of things, but I think more than anything, it's a mindset thing. It's the ability to say, I'm okay relinquishing control. I'm okay to lose deals, because you're gonna lose deals. You got to be okay with losing deals. And so, for me, when I bring a new salesperson on, I know for a fact I will probably lose hundreds of thousands of revenue as an investment in that salesperson, so that they can go and make millions in revenue for me over the long haul. And so it's an investment you've got to make. And again, they can't sit in that seat if I'm there. So I got to let them run. And so that's my very short generic answer. We
I
can get
got
more
you.
in depth if we want to.
Yeah, I got some follow-ups on that. I mean, it's a great point that you make about kind of the investment. I mean, building the sales teams at Blueprint Web or so last year, when I speak to the new salesperson, I'm like, look, these leads are yours to lose. Like, I actually, I think that's part of it too. When you said the mindset is not looking at falling in love with every lead, right?
Yes.
Understanding that leads come and go. Even the perfect lead, you got to be willing to burn it, man. Let them make their mistakes, let them fail, and then work with them. And we'll talk more about that too. But I think digging into what you just said in terms of getting more specific, your core four, right? If I remember properly, it's process, technology, people, and what's the fourth one?
Assets.
Assets.
I would say the least important, yet
Okay.
it's important.
In regards to those forks, watching the video, you were talking about how basically when you work with a client, you kind of check all four of those off or you help them build them. Does an agency need to have all four of those before they bring on a salesperson? Or is that just kind of like the right foundation for them to work within?
Not necessarily, no. I think the biggest things that we look for, just to, again, I'm all about shipping it, right? Ship the product, ship the service, whatever it might be, ship the salesperson. The foundational aspects is one, do they know what they're doing on a day-to-day basis when they come in? The number one thing that I see as an issue is the salesperson just comes in, you say, I pay you, you bring me money back. Got it? Got it. And it's like, that's not how sales works. That's not how sales leadership works. And so I think a couple things. One, you've got to become a sales leader at that point. So if you're willing to be a sales leader, that's one thing to check the box. Having a process that they can follow is important. We call it a stacking methodology. I think I have a guide floating around somewhere for stacking methodology. I'll send you that afterwards.
Yeah, for sure.
Something. And then the third thing is, I think that it's important for you to understand. Well, I'll backtrack a little bit. There's a lot of things that I would look for. So there's the process that is important, the foundational things. Tech stack, people get so overwhelmed with tech stack. Like, I don't care about the shiny object. Just give them a CRM, have it built out that is in line, or a framework that is in the same genre of the process you're building out. So how you do things, and set expectations for what they're going to do, and have accountability. I think the biggest thing for us that we do is we install a end of day daily shutdown scorecard. And Ryan, you might do that too with your team. It's super important to have this end of day shutdown scorecard because, one, it allows them to get taken out of their day-to-day sales operation and have to look at the facts, right? What did I do today? And be accountable to those things, right? And it also gives me data as a sales leader. So circling back to your original question, no, you don't need to have all the things, right? I do think it's important that you have product market training. So they need to understand your product, obviously, or your service, your market, who you serve. So understanding demographics of your market, psychographics of why they make decisions. And I would suggest, and a lot of people don't talk about this, having some sort of foot in the door offer for them to sell out the gate. So a foot in the door offer, I would imagine your follow-up question would be, explain that a little bit. But a lot of us do these big projects, right? Whether it's SEO projects on a big retainer, or it's a big consultative thing and we come in and we're overhauling something. But the hardest part about relinquishing control as the agency owner to a salesperson is saying they can never sell as good as me, or they'll never be able to scope a project profitably, like I can, right? And they don't know all the ins and outs, right? Of course they don't. No one knows it as well as you do. You created the company, you created the service. So what do you do instead? Create a foot in the door offer that they can sell, right? And it's some sort of audit, blueprint, roadmap, whatever you want it to be. That's a fraction, 5 to 10% of your overall retainer typical costs, and have them go sell that. Starting out the gate, sell the foot in the door offer. When you sell the foot in the door offer, a couple things happen. One, it's a lot easier because all they're doing is selling some sort of diagnosis and prescription, right? And so saying, hey, listen, even if you want to come work with us, we do have the retainer served in the back end. We need to get under the hood. We need to look to see what exactly your business is struggling with, where you guys are winning, where you're losing. And we're going to put together a plan in this roadmap, in this blueprint, whatever you want to call it. We call it a roadmap internally. And have them sell that $3,000 thing, right? It's not a $30,000 thing. It's not a, $4, $5, $6, $10,000 a month retainer. It's a $3,000 roadmap they've got to sell. The cool thing about that is they sell it, which isn't a hard thing for a client to bite off. Your delivery team, who does know how to scope, now is paid to scope the project. They give it back to the salesperson as a finished product, right? The roadmap. And now the salesperson just has to sell the implementation of the roadmap on the back end. They miss the entire scoping part of that project. And so that's one thing that I would say is super important when you're installing a salesperson.
Yeah, I love that. In the marketing world, we call it a tripwire product, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Old school Ryan Dice. We actually, within our training, so I said we have a third company, a software company. And basically what we do there is we take processes and automate them through an external platform called BigQuery. And we develop this audit we call a website quality audit. And that's with our younger agencies, I'm always telling them, like, don't worry about a 12-month retainer. Like focus on selling this audit, because this audit you can charge $15,000 to $5,000 for, depending on the size of the website. And the output of that audit is not only valuable to the client, but it's also going to identify more issues that then you can tack on a longer term retainer.
Or even another one people don't talk about is it qualifies the client as someone you actually want to work with. How many times have you guys gotten into a deal and then you're like, these people suck. Now we're locked into a contract, or we're locked into a big deal. I don't want to work with them. They're a pain in the ass. They're ruining my team. And this is a buffer to that decision where you can kind of get in there, work with their team in a very scaled down version, right? Doing an audit, doing a blueprint, and you can see, we have a no asshole policy. And so we just don't work with people who are assholes. And, the benefit of the roadmap is, yes, it massively increases conversions, but also it massively decreases assholes.
And you're basically getting paid for the proposal process too. I think another thing that especially SEO agencies struggle with is the scope overwhelm, right? And the need to feel like you have to identify all these things. Again, I came from big agency world, and we talk about like, they call it spec work, but like when we were pitching Universal Studios, it was a 3-month thing. Yep. And like, it was a 400-page deck that we basically built the app for them and still lost the pitch, And I get it, when you're pitching that size of work, there's additional work needed. That's just like the nature of the business. But this is a tremendous strategy, I think, and actually at our software company, we do this too. You're paying us to do a roadmap. You're paying us to come in and basically do the scope document for them. And I think part of that too, and I would love your opinion on this, is, again, a lot of people, as you alluded to, they're like, well, we have a very complex service. It's really hard to train someone on, so I have to do it, right? And one of the things that I've worked with my sales team on is really focusing on, again, the first call, not feeling overwhelmed, to go in and be like, you're not going to fix every problem. It's a conversation, right? It's much more of an advisor role, consultative role, but also too, again, focusing on the outcomes and the benefits, not how the sausage is made, right? So like our software company, it's a very, 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 very complex. It's almost kind of like old school Infusionsoft. The software was really confusing, so we sold consulting. They sold consulting on top of it, right? It's a very similar process that we have over there. And we
Salesforce, the same thing.
The same thing, right? IBM, the whole nine. They build crappy software so they can sell consulting on top. But essentially, yeah, I mean, instead of going in and trying to train the salesperson, which they'll pick up the product knowledge over time, and the more you work with them, but like getting them up to speed quickly is like, this is where they are. This is where they need to be. Focus on this. And if you get stuck with like very technical questions, just, kind of circle back with them and be like, look, this call is just for discovery purpose. We just want to make sure that we're a good fit. I mean, how do you feel about that? Is that like when you work with a company that has, an overly technical service, like technical SEO for e-commerce, something like that, do you have any strategies for how they can train their sales team on that product knowledge? Is it just like training? Is it working? Like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So we, when a salesperson comes into my organization and when a client works with us and we help them build these things out, we are a big fan of having a knowledge base internally. So an internal knowledge base where any question that we think that anyone on our team will ever ask, we will likely create some form of content around. And that can take forever. We have a nice system where I literally will, or someone on my team, whoever's in charge of that process, will jump on a Loom call. We'll either show it on our screen or we'll just talk through it verbally, send it off to a technical writer. Technical writer does their thing and they make process out of it. And so we'll do the same thing with just sales content. Any question they can ask, that way they can go in and type in artificial intelligence. Cool. Anything that has artificial intelligence in it is pulled into a search from our knowledge base, and they can start looking through some of those things. So I think having something like that as the backbone of your business, just from a product and market training perspective, is super important. Secondly, people underestimate the importance of a recorded phone call, right? My salespeople learn the best when they just listen to me talk. And so I have probably at this point hundreds of sales recordings. And when I'm done with them, I ship them off to my team. They'll tag them, based on outcome, based on topics we talked about, and those type of things. And so that's searchable as well. And so they can search conversations I've had. But then is also just pick one and listen to it and just kind of see how I dialogue and how I handle certain problems and those type of things. So those are all like little things that you can absolutely pull off today. They don't require a ton of effort if you have the team for it. And you can make it even easy, like jump on a Loom video, Loom or Vidyard or whatever you want to use, and just talk about a subject, drop it in a knowledge base, put one paragraph about what's in the video in a title, and then it's searchable. We use Notion internally. We Notion.so for our knowledge base. And so Notion's great. They have great searchability. We used to use another tool called Get Guru, I believe is what it's called, which is made to be a knowledge base. We ended up moving to Notion because it just ties in with everything else we do. But have something that's searchable. And I think that is one important thing for a salesperson to pick up. And then shadowing, the other part, have them come on the call. I'm not afraid to, when a salesperson would come on, jump on a call and have them sitting there, and they're going to sit silent, and it's going to be awkward for them, but it is what it is. It's just part of the learning curve. And I'm going to tell them like, hey, Ryan, we got JJ here on the call. He just started with us. He just wants to learn a little bit more about the types of people we like to work with. He needs to hear more about our product and service and how we deliver it. So you don't mind. He might pop in and ask a question. If not, don't worry about it. Just let them shadow, and don't be afraid that it's going to make the conversation awkward. It never does.
Yeah, 100%. I actually, when we hired my first salesperson at Weberus, I made him sit through 50 calls,
Smart,
50 calls, which was about a full month of sales calls for us.
If you hire the right people, they can be sponges and they'll pick it up fast.
100%. And I think the other thing too is, and this is not just sales, this is everything, is that the amount of like work, continuing work, I think that you have to continue to put in with your team. Like, since I've completely pulled myself out again, we talked about this before, is kind of like sales being the last frontier for agency owners, like pulling themselves out because whatever limiting beliefs or whatever mental roadblocks that they have. Right. But, this past year that I've been fully out of everything operational, now my time is 100% spent with my team. Like my calendar is filled up for 4 hours a day with, I have 3 companies now, just literally talking to, we have a sales meeting 4 days a week. I have operations meeting 4 days a week, and I'm giving, all of my time, literally I work for them. It almost flips, right? In the beginning, they're training off you. And then afterwards, you're continuously supporting them. And I think that, again, a lot of the reasons why people fail is they get them to the point where like, okay, you're ready. And then I actually made this, my first sales guy quit at Weber's because I got on the phone. I was like, all right, you're ready. You got this. Like, I'm going to go back to doing my thing. And he was like, dude, this is overwhelming. Like I need help and support. I had to learn my way through that too. But
I'd say one of the more underestimated aspects of leadership is helping them with their mental, like their mind game. These people have, they're people, right? Like a lot of us have our own mind. Like we as entrepreneurs can get in this, like, well, I'm an entrepreneur. I just go and I figure out the problem and I don't let it get in my head and I just go, right? That's my personality. And I got to realize that these people, they don't have that mindset yet, right? They might become that down the road. They might be their own entrepreneur, their own business, but a lot of them, the mind needs to be trained just as much as the skill set. And so I think I have one salesperson in particular who's just so gifted. I mean, incredibly gifted, good dude, sells well, but he is so in his head. Like I don't train him anymore on sales. I don't have to. He's very good. But what I do have to train him on is his mind and his emotions and those types of things. And that's just an underestimated sales leadership quality that I think a lot of people miss the boat on.
100%, man. 100%. I think it's actually, there's a book that I just finished reading. God, I always blank on the name. But basically what it was talking about too was how culture is like the most misunderstood thing when it comes to companies. It's people think it's like beanbag chairs and like free coffee, but it's more stuff like that. It's knowing and understanding who your people are, your team are, and offering any sort of support that they need, like continuously offering them there's levels of growth, right? It's not just product knowledge. It's not just making money. It's not just sales. It's, how can I help this person achieve their full potential as a human, which all the time then spills over to them just being way more effective in their job, way more effective working with people, the whole nine. I agree with that a lot.
One of the most, and just I don't want to derail too much, but I think one of the most unprofitable things we can do, or what hurts your profit margin the most, is losing people on your team. Which, retention from a client perspective is also a massive profit driver. Retention for your employees, I would argue, is the most important profit driver. Yeah. It's so the amount of like I talked about earlier. I don't know if we were off camera yet or on, but I talked about, being willing to invest in your salesperson and lose deals. Yeah, we talked about it on camera. Lose deals, and that's hundreds of thousands of dollars of lost revenue that I know I can go in there and close, right? My close rate's fantastic. I've been doing this forever. I can get in there. I'm also the founder. So I come with authority. I come with trust. Salespeople have to build that. And so for me, I can jump into these deals and close them. And yet I've got to let my salesperson lose them in order to learn. And that's an investment. But if I also lose the salesperson, then not only did I lose the deals, but I lost him or her. And that's an investment that we don't talk about, or the indirect costs of salespeople.
100%,
it's
man.
not just their salary, their commissions, their technology. It's not just their office space. It's your time, and it's your opportunity cost you lost.
Yep, absolutely. Actually, unfortunately, my designer, he's been with it for 2 years. He got in a motorcycle accident. He's okay, but he, ended up in the hospital, broke both of his arms, and just losing him, letting him take the next 2 months off is, you feel it, like when somebody that you're reliant on, especially when you spend so much time, so much energy training them, transferring that IP and equity into them. Yes. And then, especially if they leave for reasons of like culture or better fit somewhere else, it sucks, man. And it's incredibly costly, we actually learned it at the agency. It's the agency that I sold to. When we merged and they acquired us, we quickly ballooned to 50 people. And our first hire after that was like a full-time culture person internally to just to constantly keep a pulse on people and like make sure everyone's happy, make sure that people were getting along, like all these things, and it was one of the best investments that we made. Yeah, for sure. It's really, really
a lot
hard.
of my clients have been acquired or have been in that conversation or are acquiring. And I would say the common thing I hear the most is just the culture clash between the acquirer and the acquiree. And that's if you have a good culture and they do too, and you have to combine the two.
Yeah.
That's if you have one. If you don't have one in your company, whether you're being acquired or not, you're going to have clashes of personalities and stuff. And so being able to mitigate that and cultivate a solid culture it's one of the more valuable things you can do.
Yeah, it was tough. It set us back 1.5 years, honestly, to get the two companies integrated. The reason why I ended up leaving the company was not because I had an issue with anything going on, but like we were never we just kind of made a mistake, man. That was like, we looked at everything on paper was good. Me and the other founder were great friends, and like everything on paper lined up, like our processes matched with them, our capabilities, our clients, but like we drastically underestimated how hard it would be to merge two groups of people, especially from Miami and Philadelphia, like different everything. And like, a lot of those people, we like the 15 people churned out on their own over the 1.5 years because they were just like, this isn't what I signed up for anymore. It was tough, and it was really tough. And it was a really big lesson learned, that like, you can't just brute force your way through everything. It's not all marketing and sales. There's so much intangible stuff when it comes to just knowing and understanding human beings. And it's almost ironic because, I make jokes like kind of how you get, the more you realize that like your job is much more of an HR role as opposed to like a marketing or sales role. It's crazy.
100%. I say it all the time. People ask me what my role is. I'm just HR director, like that's basically my role nowadays.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Which I love. So I'm basically strategy and HR now. Yeah. I love people. So it's a fun, leadership is a unique quality, but it's also it's a fun thing to hone your craft around.
For sure. 100%. Speaking of which, I did want to ask, because I know one of the things that people are going to ask a lot about, in your video too, you talked about in the case study how they had 2 salespeople. The company that you're working with, they were doing $350 a month, and you ended up letting those 2 salespeople go. And then after going through your process, you hired 2 more salespeople. What is it that you look for? Like, what is it? Did those people lack something, or was it an issue with the process they were trained on? And is there something in a salesperson that you look for that, like some people say people never want to sell, right? Is that what you look for? Is there like, what is your process for looking at people who are a good fit for a sales role?
Yeah. So I'll answer the first one. So the context Ryan's talking about is a video on my website. There's a case study on there. And we talk about an agency client of ours who was they're about $4 million a year. They had 2 sales guys, and we came in and did our diagnose and prescribe. We did our foot in the door, and our suggestion was fire both of them. And they did. And we had data behind it. One was too green, one was too comfortable, right? So too green, meaning he had 0 experience whatsoever. I'm not a big experience guy. Like I actually would prefer them not to have like a decade of experience, because they come with a lot of baggage and been trained in their own ways. And, I believe my training is the best. So therefore anyone else's is lesser than. So one so I'm not a big experienced guy, but I'm not a green guy. I don't like hiring someone who's never had their teeth kicked in yet. And so nothing against this kid. He was just soft
Yeah.
and he didn't have the experience, and that's okay. I wanted to promote him to a role at someone else's company is what I like to say, AKA fired him. And then they had a senior guy, senior in air quotes, who was really comfortable. They were paying him like a $95,000 base as a sales guy.
That's a lot, yeah.
And it's a lot of money for sales, and they're paying him commission. He's getting 20% of the first month of every deal he closed. And so he was just cushy, comfortable, and he didn't like doing the hard stuff. He didn't like doing any outbound, didn't like doing follow-up. So we actually mapped out their entire pipeline, their process, and their funnel. And there was just a leak, and it always came back to this guy. There was a hole in the side of the funnel, and water was going out that way, not going down towards the bottom where we get paid. And what was happening was he was so cushy that he was only fielding inbound. He was doing no outbound. He's only fielding the inbound leads. And he ended up getting too comfortable. And he would just basically do a first-time appointment. If he could basically send them a proposal and they closed, then he'd cash a check. If they went dark, he didn't care. He just moved on to the next one. That's what we subscribe to Taylor Welch. He talks about lead disease. That's lead disease to a T. They have all these leads, and their cost per acquisition is skyrocketing because they're not doing any follow-up and all that. So all to say, that was the reason why we let go of them. What I look for in a salesperson, attitude over aptitude all day long, right? I want someone who's hungry. I want somebody who wants it. I want somebody who has something to achieve, or they have something that they want in their life, and who has a clear desire for their life, right? Doesn't mean they have like some 5-10-year plan, but that they know that their ambition is somewhere up and to the right on the graph, right? They want to keep growing. So look for that attitude, that hunger, that thing you can't really teach. It's not saying attitude versus aptitude. It's just attitude before aptitude. Aptitude is just, I can train someone to be, high quality aptitude. Mm-hmm. And so if they have the aptitude, great. And the attitude, that's what I'm looking for. And so that's the first thing I look for. Coachability is the next. Can they actually sit down with, these people kind of like to beat their chest like me. I come from a hardcore sales background. I've always done massively high ticket world. I got a lot of pride in me, and so there's some ego there, but I'm also super coachable. I believe in coaches. I believe in mentors. I believe in, I'm not where I want to be. Therefore, I need to find somebody who is, and I want to listen to them. And so I want to sit at their feet and absorb what they have to say so that I can become them and then elevate to whoever's above them. I want that in a salesperson. Are they hungry? Are they a sponge? Are they teachable? And so those are the main things I really look for. I don't look for a ton of experience, 2 to 5 years at most of sales experience, only because I want them to have some experience getting their teeth kicked in sales, because it's not easy. Yeah.
A quick follow-up on that. So where do you mainly hire off of? Do you have a platform that you go for? And then also, do you have a specific set of questions that will lead people into understanding what their attitude is? And also to understanding that a lot of people are very good at fabricating, especially salespeople, right? So, I mean, how do you kind of sift through that? And where do you also hire from if you have a preferred platform?
Yeah, for sure. So what's cool, I actually have it's a $500 Fire Yourself Academy. I'll just give it to whoever's listening for free if you're cool with that. So before we hang up, I'll just tell you, I want you to email my senior client client success guy, and he'll get you hooked up on the free stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But that whole thing talks about my whole hiring, training, and managing process for the most part. there's some stuff missing in there, but it gives you a great basis. So I have a 5-step hiring funnel that we build. We've gone back and forth between 2 different tools. There's Jazz HR and there's Breezy HR. I would say from a process and an automation perspective, Breezy's better, but from a candidate syndication, which I'll explain that in a minute, Jazz is better. So tool agnostic here, if we're just going tool agnostic, the whole goal here is I want to cast a really wide net. I want 200 candidates. So your goal should be between 150 and 200 candidates coming in who just apply. Mm-hmm. And so people are like, I don't want to go through 200 candidates. You don't have to. So here's the next thing is you have a stock templatized or automated email that goes off that sends it to those 200 candidates that applied. And what you want from those 200 candidates is you want them to submit a Loom video, 5 minutes at most, answering a few questions, right? And there's a couple questions from, what are you interested in? What are you interested in the role? Tell us something unique about yourself, like whatever. What you're going to find is 15% are going to submit a video. So you're going to go from 200 to 30 really fast. And you won't have to look at a single resume or a single cover letter. Of those 30 that are going to submit a video, 15 are probably going to be worth moving forward. So you're going to watch a video in the first 10 seconds, get rid of a few of them. You're going to watch a few, and within the first minute, you're going to be like, they're great, move them on. You know, some of them you'll watch all 5 minutes, but very rarely. And so we move them on. That's step 2. Step 3 is the first interview. And so you have now gone from 200 to 15. You're going to have 15 interviews. And in those interview process, and I'll get to like which platforms we're getting candidates from here in a second. Mm-hmm. In the interview process, we do, this is more about attitude and aptitude. So I want to get a little bit more understanding. I want to make them a little uncomfortable too, because this is sales. You know, it's an uncomfortable position to some degree. And so I'm going to ask them, like, one of my favorite questions is middle of the interview. I'll stop and I'll be like, how do you think this is going? And I'll just be quiet, because I want to see, like, they're going to, good. I don't know. You know, like, I want to see how they handle that situation, because they're going to be put in those awkward situations in sales. And so kudos or bonus points if they say, give their answer and say, how do you think this is going? Like, dude, I'm going to put you all the way to my 5th step if I can, you know, like that's a great, so that's something we always seed in there. The 4th step. So if they move it past the interview, about 50% of those, you'll probably move beyond there, is the homework and assessment. So we'll do a personality assessment. We use a tool called humantrends.co, which is essentially a sales version of the DISC assessment. Mm-hmm. I don't put a ton of stock in personality, but there are a few things that I look for that I'm not super into. You know, I just know they're not going to be great. So I like higher D. I don't like people who are super high C, because they get in their head too much. Their engineer brain, they're not great from the sales perspective. So if they make it past the homework and assessment, they're great. Then the 5th one is more about the executive interview, which is with the founder, with you, the CEO, with your leadership team if you have one. And it's about culture. At that point, they're good, like they're a solid fit. It's just a cultural fit type of call. And so, and negotiations, if you feel like doing negotiations. I don't negotiate salaries. You tell me what you want. I'm going to keep you kind of, I have two models. We can get into those later. So that's my regular hiring process. Back to the original question, where do I get them from? Honestly, LinkedIn and Indeed are the 2 platforms that give the highest quality and honestly highest quantity of candidates as well. But the good thing about using Jazz or Breezy is they syndicate to all those platforms for you. So you make one job posting, you do all the things, you hit one button, boom, it sends them to 25 different job places. And you're going to notice that 2% come from other places and 98 come from LinkedIn and Indeed, roughly 60-40 split.
Real quick on comp too, I'll follow up, because I feel like that's another thing that people struggle with. When the agency that I sold into, again, because it was very technical, we specialized in basically enterprise technical SEO, $150,000 to $250,000 contracts, very technical. We were paying our 2 sales guys a very high base, $80K and up, and they constantly wanted more. Versus now, I've actually flipped, going through TNF, it's a little bit different model, right? Because what they're selling versus what we're selling, but I've actually flipped and gone to a lower base with a much higher RIP. I mean, how do you determine that? Because I know it's different for every company. Is it product based?
And in that Fire Yourself Academy, there is a compensation guide. So there's like 10 different compensation plans you can look at. But I'll tell you, my favorite of all time is what we call a tiered draw plus commission. So tiered draw to base plus commission. So what that essentially means is, if you've ever heard of the terminology of a draw, it's essentially like your company is now the bank. And so you are lending them a salary for a season, right? Because there's an onboarding period, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Now, let me back this up. If you have a ton of inbound, there's not a whole lot of need to pay a salary. Realistically, they can make a ton of money, just have a great commission structure. If you have a ton of inbound, that's great. If you have a hybrid of inbound versus outbound, then I think, you need to get a little more creative. So tiered draw to base plus commission, and that'll make sense in a second. So the draw part is I'm going to start you, for 6 months, you're going to have a salary, and I'm going to start you at a certain point. The tiered part is it's dropping every month, and it's going to drop off at the end of 6 months to 0. Now, it's a tiered draw, and the reason I do that is because I'm mitigating some of my risk. I'm not mitigating all of it, right? But I'm not taking on all the risk, and neither are they. And so commission only, they're taking on all the risk. Massive base, you're taking on all the risk. And so this is kind of a hybrid in between the two. And so what it is it gives them a cushion where they are getting paid a base, right, for 6 months. The caveat is, and plus commission, right? So I do have a commission structure. The caveat is with every sale they make, they will get 50% of their commission, right? That will go to them plus their draw. But the 50% that they forego goes back to the bank of me, right? So if I'm paying $4,000 a month on a draw, then they owe me $4,000 in commission that they're going to pay, or $4,000 back to me that they're going to pay through 50% of their commission. Once they've cleared what they owe, then they go up to 100% commission, or their 100% commission structure. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say tiered draw to base plus commission is because I actually want to then throw a base on it at the end of 6 months. But now I have data on how their first 6 months went, on what an actual solid base would look like from a profit margin standpoint and from a relevancy to what they actually need and want.
Gotcha. I like that a lot. I do want to respect your time, so I know we have a stop at the top of the hour. So the last thing I want to cover is outbound. Yep. A lot of agencies struggle with it. And I think a lot of agencies will start with it, and then as inbound picks up, rely on inbound, but it sounds like you rely heavily on outbound, right? Can you talk to us a little bit about your outbound process?
Yeah. I eat, sleep, and breathe outbound. And the way that we look at outbound is we look at outbound like we are fishing with spears, not with nets. And so for us, some people might call that account-based, right? Account-based sales, account-based marketing, whatever you want to call it. For us, I have a very specific type of client in mind of who I want to work with. I highly suggest if you don't have your dream client, right? There's total addressable market, right? That's everyone in your market that could buy at any price point ever have a pain point. There's the commoditized market, which is like these SEO services that are really productized, that don't drive a ton of results. Or creative services or whatever it might be. Think of like a design pickle in the design world. So that's commoditized market. So you're really racing. You're competing on price. Is their ideal market is where you start value-based pricing, right? You're not pricing based on your input. You're pricing based on your value. Dream market is really just those solid customers that they have some of the intangibles that you really want, right? The amazing to work with, perfect product that we know we can help, blah, 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 right? So I'm a big believer of operating in those two, the ideal market and the dream market. And so for us, we have a very specific criteria, and we highly suggest our clients having very specific criteria of who they want to work with. Don't be a generalist, right? Heart surgeons make a lot more than general practitioners for a reason. They're very specific to what they do. They help a very specific type of person with a specific type of ailment. And so be a heart surgeon. Don't be the general practitioner. Don't just be an SEO agency who helps all people with SEO, because you're never going to be looked at as an expert necessarily. But that said, so how we do that is, for us, fishing with spears part is I know the fish I want, I know the weapon I'm going to use, and I'm going to go after them and I'm going to throw that strike. The net is I'm going to go into a cove where I think my fish are at. I'm going to toss it out there, and whatever comes up, comes up. Right? That's the traditional sales approach, which is the high volume of outreach, low conversion. And so you're going after thousands, hoping for a 1% conversion rate, and that's how you get your client base. You don't know who's coming out the bottom of that typically, right? But when you go this approach, you flip the funnel upside down. You say, who are the people that I want to come out the bottom, that I can charge the most for? They're going to trust me to do my best work, that I can solve the biggest problem for. And I want to reverse engineer, who are those people, and how do I get them to pay me? And how do I get them to let me solve their problem? And so we will actually define our hit lists. So If you have 100 accounts you want to go after, defining who those 100 accounts are, defining the key players in each account, segmenting those accounts into cohorts so that you can go after them in batches, and then doing, very unscalable but very effective high conversion type. Right? I'm a low volume, high conversion kind of guy versus a high volume, low conversion kind of guy.
Yeah.
And so that takes things that don't scale, right? You can't just throw automation behind that, right? It takes really understanding your client, really understanding the prospect, the specific prospect, not just like the persona, but like, who's John? Like, what does John care about? What's he interested in? What's his biggest problems? Does he have hobbies outside of his work? How can I do that? We talked about Rankings.io, who's a big SEO agency in the space. And they've been a longtime friend and client of ours. And something we did for them, because they go after massive, like 40, 50, 60, $100,000 a month retainers for SEO services, just SEO.
That's crazy what they're doing, actually. But
yeah, it's nuts. And Chris is so impressive.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot just from being a client of ours, but just being friends. I've learned a lot from him, and he has these massive marquee accounts he's going after. And some campaigns we put together are like, we found out that this one account, this one attorney in Birmingham is a massive attorney. If you've driven through Alabama, these billboards, you've seen them everywhere. It's like the running joke of the Southeast. And we knew they're having an anniversary for their firm. So we worked with a local bakery to create this elaborate cake for them that said happy anniversary and had all these pictures on it, whatever. And then it said, hey, Alexander, go to this URL on the cake. Sent it to him. In the URL that we were going to have them go to, it had a landing page with Chris on the video talking to Alexander. Right? Like doing those types of things, followed up with like direct mail, handwritten letters, of course, email, LinkedIn, et cetera, doing video, emails, stuff like that. That's the type of campaigns you got to put together if you want to go whale hunting, and that's what we believe in.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. So again, I do want to respect your time. We've been talking for an hour now, man. I do appreciate you coming on. You dropped a lot of knowledge. I know that a lot of our folks can find it valuable. So tell the people one more time how they can find you.
Cool. Yeah. So salesdrivenagency.com. It's a very simplified, we were joking about, it's a very simplified, stripped down website for a reason. I talked about the Fire Yourself Academy. We don't have a link for it because we don't have it for free. It's $500, but for you guys, if you can help them with this, but if you will email jj@salesdrivenagency.com. So jj@salesdrivenagency.com with the subject line "Fire Me" or something along those lines. So he knows to get you what you need. He'll get you hooked up.
Awesome, man.
He'll give you that for free.
I really appreciate it. I know that's going to be a tremendous amount of value for the folks, especially where they're at. Thanks again for your time, brother. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you.
We'll be in touch, man. All right.